September 21st, 2025. Ukrainian intelligence operators guide their kamikaze drones toward Kacha Air Base in occupied Crimea, one of the Black Sea Fleet's key aviation hubs. Through grainy video feeds, the familiar targets come into view. Mi-8 helicopters clustered near the hangars, the kind Russia uses for everything from troop transport to reconnaissance. But as the drones sweep across the airfield, the operators spot something else on the tarmac, something that doesn't belong in a modern war. Its distinctive gull-shaped wings and boat-like hull mark it as a relic from another era, a design that looks like it should be rusting in a museum, not sitting on an active military airfield. Russia has very few of these left, and they're about to have even fewer. In the late 1950s, at the height of the Cold War arms and technology race, Soviet aircraft designer Georgy Beriev faced a challenging assignment to create an amphibious patrol aircraft that could hunt American submarines lurking in Soviet waters. The result was the Be-12 Chakya, meaning seagull in Russian, a twin turboprop flying boat with distinctive gull-shaped wings that allowed it to land on both water and conventional runways. The aircraft first took to the skies in October 1960, before entering service with Soviet naval aviation 3 years later. The Be-12 represented cutting-edge anti-submarine warfare technology for its era. It had a glazed nose station in the navigator, a magnetic anomaly detector in the tail sting, and a weapons bay packed with depth charges and torpedoes. However, the Be-12's moment as a state-of-the-art hunter proved short-lived. As submarine technology advanced, and American bombers learned to launch their missiles from thousands of miles offshore, the aircraft's vacuum tube electronics and limited range made it increasingly obsolete. Production came to an end in 1973, with just 150 airframes completed. When the USSR dissolved, its B-12 fleet was divided between Russia and Ukraine, with 55 going to Moscow. In 1992, Russia officially decommissioned the type, except the decommissioning was apparently just paperwork. Actual flight operations continued, with crews maintaining proficiency in these increasingly rare aircraft, despite having no obvious mission for them. The numbers dwindled steadily. The 55 B-12s Russia possessed in the early 90s had dropped to 12 by 2005, and just 9 by 2008. Most were cannibalized for parts or left to rot at forgotten air bases. In 2006, concerned about the aging airframe's structural integrity, Russian authorities banned the remaining Be-12s from landing on water, defeating the point of their flying boat design. Then in 2011, Russia launched an ambitious state armament program, promising $700 billion over the next decade to modernize its aging military, including even some of the most unlikely corners of Russia's inventory. Between 2012 and 2013, 4 Be-12s with reworked engines and reinforced structures, a curious move for an aircraft that had technically been off the books for 2 decades. However, the investment in these aging amphibians took on new strategic value when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. The peninsula's Kacha Air Base, where the remaining Be-12s were stationed, and the nearby Yevpatoria maintenance plant were now under permanent Russian control, rather than Ukrainian lease agreements. In 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, this handful of half-century-old flying Cold War relics would suddenly find themselves with an unexpected new mission. That summer, beachgoers along the Crimean coastline began reporting an unusual sight: lumbering propeller-driven aircraft with distinctive gull wings flying low over the water, sometimes barely skimming above the waves. Videos and photos soon circulated on social media, showing the Be-12s conducting what appeared to be patrol missions along the peninsula's coast. International military analysts keeping tabs on Russian naval aviation quickly noticed the pattern. These weren't training flights or nostalgic air shows. Incredibly, Russia's Black Sea Fleet had pressed its handful of surviving Be-12s into active wartime service. Yet interestingly, they were not being used for the anti-submarine role they'd been designed for. After all, Ukraine's navy had no submarines to hunt. Instead, the flying boats had been assigned to hunt a threat their Soviet-era designers never anticipated: explosive drone boats. Ukraine's naval drone campaign had begun modestly enough in late 2022, with crude, explosive-laden watercraft on one-way missions to ram Russian vessels. But by 2023, these uncrewed surface vehicles, or USVs, had evolved into a sophisticated and devastating threat to Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Ukrainian engineers had developed multiple variants: kamikaze boats packed with hundreds of pounds of explosives, reusable anti-aircraft platforms mounting surface-to-air missiles, gunboats armed with machine guns, and even USVs that could launch first-person view attack drones. The results proved catastrophic for Moscow's naval forces. Ukrainian drone boats severely damaged the cruiser Moskva before it sank in April 2022, struck landing ships in port, damaged the flagship Admiral Makarov, and conducted raids on naval facilities across occupied Crimea. By mid-2023, Ukraine's relentless USV attacks had effectively driven much of Russia's Black Sea Fleet from its historic base at Sevastopol to Novorossiysk on the Russian mainland, a humiliating retreat for a navy that had controlled these waters since the 18th century. Russia desperately needed eyes in the sky to detect these threats before they reached their targets. The BE-12, for all its obsolescence, offered a solution born of desperation. Its extensive glazed nose station, originally designed for a navigator to spot submarine periscopes, gave the aircraft excellent visibility for detecting small surface contacts. Meanwhile, its basic radar, though hopelessly outdated for modern anti-submarine warfare, could still paint a crude picture of the coastline and detect surface vessels. Most importantly, it could fly slow patrol patterns for hours at a time, something jet aircraft couldn't manage. Whether the B-12s were actually effective at detecting Ukraine's increasingly sophisticated drone boats remained unclear, but their presence represented one of the few tools Russia had left to monitor the waters around the peninsula, and that was enough to make them a tempting target for Ukraine. By September 2025, intelligence agencies estimated that Russia had perhaps 4 to 5 operational BE-12s conducting regular patrols off Crimea's coast, all based at Kacha. Satellite imagery had tracked them for months, monitoring their positions on the tarmac and flight patterns along the coast. The flying boats were typically parked in the open, without the hardened aircraft shelters that protected Russia's more valuable combat jets at other Crimean bases. Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, known by its Ukrainian acronym GUR, assigned the mission to a unit that had made a specialty of striking high-value targets deep in occupied territory, the elite special forces team known as Ghost. The unit had already demonstrated its capabilities earlier that month with a strike that destroyed 3 Mi-8 helicopters and a crucial Nebo-U radar system. In the early morning hours of September 21st, small first-person view drones launched toward Kacha Air Base. The first drone struck a BE-12 bearing the number 8 painted on its fuselage. Seconds later, another BE-12 was hit. Ukrainian operators noted something peculiar about one of the targets. It appeared to be missing a propeller from one of its engines, suggesting it might have already been non-operational, possibly serving as a source of spare parts for the remaining airworthy aircraft. The drones didn't stop with the flying boats. An Mi-8 AMTSH helicopter, one of Russia's more modern transport variants equipped for electronic warfare, took a direct hit as well. The entire strike lasted only minutes, but the implications would resonate far beyond that morning. If the Black Sea Fleet had possessed perhaps 4 or 5 airworthy BE-12s before September 21st, the strike had potentially cut that force in half in a single morning. The operational impact was immediate and severe. Russia's chances of repairing the damage seemed a questionable prospect, given the scarcity of spare parts for a type that hadn't been manufactured in over 50 years. To make matters worse for the Russians, their options for replacing the BE-12's maritime patrol capability are severely limited. Modern patrol aircraft, like the IL-38, exist in the nation's inventory, but in small numbers, and are desperately needed for anti-submarine warfare missions elsewhere. Helicopters can patrol coastal waters, but lack the range and endurance of fixed-wing aircraft. Drones might seem like an obvious solution, but Russia has struggled throughout the war to field capable medium and long-range reconnaissance UAVs in sufficient numbers. More broadly, the destruction of the BE-12s represents another chapter in Ukraine's systematic degradation of Russian capabilities in Crimea, a forward position that's expensive to defend and increasingly difficult to use for offensive operations. The loss of the BE-12 is just one more cut in this slow bleeding, but it carries a particular symbolism. Aircraft that survived the entire Cold War without a single combat loss, that outlasted the Soviet Union itself, were finally brought down not by a superpowered rival, but by the very Ukrainian drones they were supposed to hunt.